Wei Hak Soon, known mainly as Willie, I don't know why, is an engineer at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. Ooh, so this guy, has credentials, and he's a really smart guy, and he's immersed in science. And he also happens to be one of the most prominent climate change deniers. Uh-oh, what the fuck is that about? That's random. All these credentials, but somehow against climate science. That's fascinating. So he's written papers on how sunspots contribute more to climate change than fossil fuels. Think Progress reports, quote, his papers have cast doubt on how hot the last century really was, whether polar bears are negatively impacted by a warming Arctic, and concluded the sun plays a larger role in climate change than greenhouse gas emissions. He has said that mainstream climate scientists and those concerned by the causes and impacts of human-caused climate change are out of their minds. That's a quote. He said, quote, out of their minds. Well, previously, we didn't really know too much about where this guy soon got his funding from. But thanks to a joint investigation by Greenpeace, Climate Investigations Center, and the New York Times, now we know, and perhaps it's unsurprising. Quote, over the last decade, Soon failed to disclose his funding in at least 11 of his scientific papers, likely violating ethical guidelines in 8 of those cases. He took $409,000 from Southern Company, a huge utility company whose giant coal plants regularly top the list of largest greenhouse gas emitters in the country. Shock, shock. $274,000 from the American Petroleum Institute. $335,000 from ExxonMobil. $230,000 from the Koch Foundation, whose money, of course, has been made mostly through refining oil, and $324,000 from the Heartland Institute and Americans for Prosperity. Those are pro-fossil fuel groups, and Americans for Prosperity is a right-wing think tank. This is where he got his funding from. Busted. Now, my favorite part of this story is his quote, because he has said in the past, I take grassroots donations. Come on, man. I'm a man of high moral character. He said, I take grassroots donations, quote, always for very small amounts. If they choose to fund me, I'm happy to receive it. The only condition, as I always tell anybody, is I would never be motivated by money for anything. And to put it even more simply, if you'd be so kind as to listen, is that if Al Gore wants to fund me, if Greenpeace wants to fund me, I will be happy to take their money. Unless their money is so dirty, by the way. If it's from stealing people's money, I will not take it because it's not principled. I'm a very principled man. Tell me about those principles again, big guy. Me? I don't take money. There are no conflicts of interest here, no corruption here. I'm a principled man. No strings attached if you give me money. Really? Then why is it that all of your findings line up with what big oil wants and the fossil fuel companies want, and lo and behold, look who's funding you, all of those companies. Anytime you see any so-called intellectual, so-called professor, so-called scientist arguing for something that you know flies in the face of the scientific consensus, always question where the funding comes from. Because this guy was the last of the Mohicans. This guy was one of the few guys who the right still pointed to and went, what do you mean? There's still a debate. Of course there's still a debate. Look, we have this one guy who's involved in Harvard with astrophysics and all this stuff, and he's on our side, so there's still a debate. See, we got this guy, we got this guy, we got this guy. Oh, really? Well, before we weren't too sure exactly where his money came from. Now we know exactly where his money came from, and now we can see the conflict of interest. This is just like all those scientists who took money from the tobacco companies and said, not that long ago, by the way, in the 1970s, oh, I don't know if smoking cigarettes leads to cancer. I'm not sure. We need more study. The evidence isn't clear. It could be something else. It could be this. The sun was in my eyes, and I had some bad tuna fish for lunch, and maybe that is the reason why the thing leads to the thing, and blah, 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 blah. Bullshit. Bullshit. He's full of shit. The real corruption is on their side, and this makes it clear.